Good morning, everyone, and happy Easter to you. It certainly is a different kind of Easter that we're having this year, isn't it? With all of us at home and many of us away from our loved ones. But I know that we can connect through technology, and I'm so grateful for that. So, welcome back. It's wonderful to have you here this morning. I'm going to talk a bit about the first Easter. And I'm going to start with the story of Easter morning, or what we now call Easter morning, which in the Bible was called the first day of the week because it was a Sunday. And the two Marys, Mary, the mother of Jesus, and Mary Magdalene, went together to visit the tomb where Jesus had been wrapped in a shroud and where his body was left. And there'd been a big boulder that was rolled across the cave, which would entomb him. And when they got there, they were completely shocked because they thought they were going to be kneeling and praying in front of the stone, thinking about Jesus inside, the same way that you and I might go to a graveyard and kneel before a gravestone and pray for a loved one and remember that loved one. But instead, the boulder had been rolled away. They were in total shock. And they looked inside the tomb, and Jesus was not there. There was no sign of him. But there was a spiritual being seated there, just wearing a long white gown and surrounded by light. And he said to them, "You're looking for Jesus, but he's not here. He has risen, and he's with his disciples. Go to his disciples, and you will see him." And they were very excited and somewhat in awe and in shock. And they left, and sure enough, they were able to find him. The master was with his disciples. It's an amazing story, and it's something that might give us pause. So ever since I can remember ministers in churches that I attended saying that Jesus rose from the dead that day. And it's the kind of thing that as a child you just sort of absorb and you accept it. But I love what Ernest Holmes said, not specifically about Easter, but about death itself. When he was asked if he believed there was a life after death, he said no. And that really shocked everybody when he said that, because that seemed that somebody as spiritual as he would never say such a thing. And then he said, "I don't believe in death." He said, "We come from the other side. We inhabit this physical form for as long as we need to, till our purpose here is fulfilled. And then we go back again to the other side. We live a different kind of experience from the one that we lived here on earth. But nevertheless, there is no death. We just leave this particular physical garment behind." And I really like that. I like that idea that um, that we don't ever think about death. We just know that we are eternal beings and we go on with our lives and go on with our spiritual selves and our spiritual nature, wherever we might go, whatever we might be doing at that time. But as I think about the story of the tomb and the boulder and Jesus having left the tomb, I think about our own personal resurrection, a kind of rising up, because I really think that's what Easter is about. It's about the resurrection of our consciousness. It's about rising up from our mundane lives, rising up from our troubles, from all of our concerns, rising above them, and being in a higher and better place in our own consciousness, in our minds, and creating a better life because of that. The tomb is a very powerful, powerful metaphor for this. It's the place where we kind of go and get stuck in our stories. You know, those stories that we created, we wrote them all by ourselves. Those wonderful stories, those great dramas about what our parents did to us or didn't do, what our siblings did or didn't do, what our teachers said to us, what friends did, the experiences that we've had along the way. You know, we create these massive stories and tend to blame them for where we are in our lives if we're not happy with where we are. And it's all fiction. We're making it all up. That stuff is all in the past, and we don't need to cling to it anymore. As you know, I'm fond of saying, you know, that's my story and I'm sticking to it, but I really want to get unstuck from it. And I want to get unstuck from it now. And when we're stuck in our stories, I think it's like being in a tomb. We're not free. There's that boulder rolled across the mouth of the cave of the tomb, and we just can't get past it. It's so distressing. And life doesn't seem to change when we're there. And what we need to do is to just push that boulder aside. In other words, push those stories aside and not let them hang on to us, cling to us any longer. It's time for a fresh perspective on our lives. It's time for personal freedom. And it's time for us to just be rising up into a God-based consciousness. This, after all, is who we are. You know, I don't know if I've told the story before, but there's a wonderful story, an ancient story about a king who placed an enormous boulder in the middle of a roadway. And there was really not much room to get around it. People could walk around it, but a wagon couldn't get past it. And people who were of the elite class and people who were wealthier than others would go past it. They would just take a look at the boulder and circumvent it, go around it, and keep on with their path. But there was a peasant with a huge sack of vegetables over his shoulders, and he approached the stone and he looked at it, and he put his sack of vegetables down, and he went and he put his shoulder into the stone, and he pushed and he pushed, and he couldn't budge it, and he pushed with his hands, and then finally mightily put the full force of his body behind the stone and pushed again, and it started to move, and then he pushed it some more and it rolled aside. And as it did, he noticed that there was a purse lying on the ground. And he picked up the purse and he opened it up, and it was filled with gold coins. And there was also a note inside, a note from the king. And the king said, "Whoever pushes this stone aside is the owner of this purse of gold." Well, you can imagine how the peasant was just so excited by this, so thrilled by this. And to me, this is such a wonderful metaphor for life. When we are carrying our burdens along and we just come to a roadblock. We don't feel like our lives are going to change in any way. And then we're just determined. We do our very best to push it out of the way. And what we do is we move into that gold, into that golden light, into that golden consciousness, into that higher consciousness that is the divine consciousness. I think that story just represents it so beautifully, and something that's really good for us to remember right now with all of the things that we're going through on this planet. It's almost like we're going through our own kind of crucifixion. We live in times where things are very painful. We're seeing people dying of this terrible virus. We're concerned about our loved ones. Some are concerned about their own health. We see people dying. Maybe we know people who have died or who've had this virus and have been very, very ill. And we certainly don't want to have it in our own lives. So I kind of look at that as like a crucifixion. And it's something that we need to rise above. It's a place where we need to be putting our prayers right now. Let us all pray for this planet, for this beautiful earth. Let us pray that this virus is just removed from it, sort of vacuumed up from it, and it just dissipates into the ethers, into nothingness, never to come back again. And let us pray for those who are sick, and let us pray for those who are afraid. Let us pray for those who don't quite know how to rise up, and pray that they do, and pray that love and compassion and human kindness transcends everything else right now. We're seeing examples of that every day in the news, and it's wonderful to see people stopping to care about one another and to show how they care about one another. It's a time for us to give up criticism, to give up judgment, to give up blame. We don't know why people react the way they do to whatever they're reacting to. We haven't walked in their shoes. We haven't walked a mile or 10 miles or even 10 feet in their shoes. And so it's not for us to judge. That's something that we can really clean up in our lives. Clean up judgment and criticism and just see the spirit, the spirit in every human being. As we keep on saying that we are spirit having a human experience, If we could only believe that about everyone that we see, about everyone that we meet, we would be going a long way to changing our own lives and making them a lot happier than they might presently be. It's time. This is the time. We've never seen anything like this before. This is the time for us to get closer to God than we've ever been before. And we have the time to do that. We don't have an excuse for not doing it. We don't have an excuse for not praying. Don't have an excuse for not meditating. Not having enough time is simply not the excuse, as we're housebound or maybe just out able to go for a walk or occasionally shop for a few groceries or a few supplies. So it's time to really be counting our blessings, to look at the good things that we do have in our lives, and to realize that those stones that we've had, the stories that I call stones, are really just false beliefs. They're false beliefs that keep us from God. They keep us from our spiritual nature. They weigh us down. They bring in sadness. They bring in distress. They bring in worry. And it's really time for us to step out of our tombs, roll away those stones, and to take charge of our lives in a new and exciting way. It's there for us to do. It's time for us to be wise and to be loving and to be kind, to be compassionate, to be understanding of other people, to just want to embrace them all with a tender heart, to embrace this entire earth with a tender heart, to do the best that we can to help one another in any way that we can. We can begin by being humble, by not seeing ourselves as being the elite who can just circumvent the stones, just, decide not to look at the problems or the challenges in our lives, not to do that self-examination that is so important in our lives, important to who we are to become, because we are always in a state of becoming. And let us hope that we're in a state of becoming better than we have been in every way, happier than we have been, more loving than we have ever been. It's an important time for that exploration of ourselves. And being humble, understanding that we are vulnerable beings, understanding that we're no better than anyone else. We all have our human failures and we all have our successes. It's an equal playing field. I think about Ernest Holmes, and he said that when he passes, this was before his passing, which was April 5th, 1967, he said, when I pass, somebody's sure to write a book about me, and don't let them put a halo on me when they do it. I never wore a halo here on this earth, and I'm certainly not going to be wearing one in the hereafter. And I love that. He had such a wonderful sense of humor. He had, such a no-nonsense approach to so many things, and yet had this great loving heart and this enormous wisdom. I really, really believe that he was as close to God as Jesus was. He was a remarkable man, and that's the topic for another talk one day, all of the things that he accomplished. And some of us are aware of many, many of those things. But he said that after he passes, he's not going to come back. He said, people are going to say that they had sightings of Ernest Holmes. He said, if they say that to you, just shut the door in their faces, because it's going to be untrue. Once I leave here, I'm never coming back. I will have fulfilled my purpose here on this earth, and there will be nothing for me to come back to. I have enjoyed everything that it has to offer, and I will not be returning. Imagine that. I have done everything that I came here to do. Can we say that? I think that's just the most amazing thing to say. And then when he says there will be sightings, there will be people who say that they have seen Ernest Holmes, as I just said, and shut the door on their faces and don't believe them. When I first said that and first thought about it, I remembered that a minister, and I can't remember who it was, said that there were probably more sightings of Elvis than there were of Jesus at the time. And isn't that the truth? And it doesn't mean that we don't see those beings. It doesn't mean that that doesn't exist. I've had the great blessing in my life of seeing two of them. One who spoke with me directly, and the other who kind of hovered as a vision, a shadow, but a very loving presence in my life. We can see these beings if they're around us and if we're open to seeing them and open and aware. Sometimes we want to with all of our hearts and it just doesn't happen, but it doesn't mean that they're not with us. They're always with us on the other side, and the other side doesn't have to be way up there somewhere. The other side can be right in front of us. It's just invisible to us. And so we're just being asked to just love, to accept the love and to give the love, to always give the love to them, whoever it might be. Yes, we miss them. We miss their physical presence. But as Ernest Holmes said, he's going to see Hazel, his dear wife, on the other side when he goes. And there's nothing for him to be sad about and nothing for anyone to be sad about. He rose above that, the humanness, the human moments. That's what we're being asked to do, is to rise above our human moments, to rise above those things about ourselves that can drag us down, that can make us sad, that can make us unhappy. You know, Dr. Holmes, he just said, every human heart is longing for this release into freedom. Every human heart is longing for spiritual evolution, longing for a higher consciousness. He said, in the same way that a hungry man is longing for a slice of bread, our hearts and souls are longing for this. What a good time to remember this on Easter Sunday. What a good time to remember that we can resurrect ourselves right here and right now. We don't have to go through a process that many call death. We don't have to shed our physical garments to have a resurrection in our lives. We can do this by rising above our human conditions right here and right now, by spreading our love out into the world, by spreading human kindness everywhere that we go, by understanding the truth of who we are, that we were born with spirit within us, the Christ presence within us. You know, Jesus wasn't born the Christ. He became the Christ at age 30 when he fully embodied spirit. We may not be there yet. I know I'm not. But it's never too late for us to be working on it, to understand that the Christ is there, and for us to embody God in every way that we can, with our thoughts, with our actions, our deeds. What would God do? What would Jesus do? I'm talking about the kind of Jesus that we teach about in our teaching. Jesus who was not the exception, or rather Jesus, but Jesus who was the example of who we can all be. Jesus who was the way shower, the one who taught us how to live our best lives, the one who taught us to live in love, whose messages were messages of love and of healing and of grace and of peace. That's what he brought into the world. The love and peace and wisdom that didn't exist in the Old Testament of the Bible. And so let us not diminish the stories of Jesus. Instead, let's look at those stories and let us see the wisdom that we can find within them for our own personal lives, because that wisdom is there. Just as the rolling away of the stone and getting out of the tomb set him free, is a message for us and how we can do this for ourselves. Let's make this a really special Easter. Let's reach out and understand and say, you know, God, I am. God, I am. I am that I am. I am spirit having a human experience. This holy presence lives in me, and it lives in everyone, everywhere, and in everything, everywhere. And as we do, let us be stepping ever upward resurrecting ourselves into a higher consciousness. And may we not slip back from that. Because as we do, we're sending out a vibration of love and compassion and truth and joy to the entire world. And so let us be joyful on this day. I wish you all a blessed Easter and a really wonderful week, and look forward to seeing you again next week. And so it is. And of course, this is the time that we typically pass the basket when we're at our center. And so I invite you, if you wish, to go to the donate button at the top of this page and to make a donation to our center, because we want it to be there physically for us when we get back. We still have bills to pay, and you're the ones who make it possible to keep that physical site open as well. So bless you for all that you do and for all that you give. And if you're watching this on Facebook, you can go to our website, www.cslvictoria.org, and you can make a donation there, again, by pushing the donate button. Or you can send a check to our treasurer, Lillian Slanina, or you can e-transfer me at Rev Carrie, that's REVCARRIE, at shaw.ca, and I will pass that along to Lillian. Bless you all for all you do. I do hope that you have a wonderful day today, that you remember Easter's past with family, and you look forward to all of those to come, all of the beauty and wonder of the earth yet to come. We have time to think about that these days and to just examine the beauty that is all around us. You are beautiful. Your souls are beautiful. I send you my blessings. I send you love, and I look forward to seeing you again. And so it is. Bye for now.